I'm now joined by ESPN 1530's Mo Ager. Mo Ager, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Ryan. How are you?
Not bad for a Tuesday night. Just wrapping up some Big 12 Media Day stuff. You're the one that's been asking everyone else about it, so I figured I'd get you on to get your thoughts on it. You spoke to Scott Springer, Keegan Nicholson, as well as Jim Kelly. What are your thoughts on Big 12 Media Days being held at, one of the iconic venues in football?
Yeah, I talked to Justin Williams as well, and to me, what maybe stood out more than anything was the stark difference between the Big 12 Media Days spectacle and what American Athletic Conference Media Days were. And look, when that league first started, the home office was in Rhode Island. They had a clam bake in Newport, Rhode Island, and then as things evolved, and COVID had something to do with this, it felt like a smaller and smaller event every single year. And it was not an event that you saw Heather Dinich reporting from. It was not an event that you saw a lot of national people reporting from. And look, the Big 12 was at the epicenter of a big discussion about conference realignment, ultimately who's going to join the league, the departures of Oklahoma and Texas. But for UC to be kind of in the middle of all that, I think was pretty cool, and it was different. I mean, I'm kind of used to. I've never gone to conference media day, but I'm kind of used to, all right, one or two people locally go, and then around the country, it's not that big of a deal. In large part to the fact that due in large part to the fact that nothing else was really going on in sports, and they started their media day before some of the other leagues. It felt like Big 12 media days for 2 days were sort of the epicenter of the American sports world, and for Cincinnati to be a part of that, I think is pretty cool.
Were you surprised at all with any of the preseason polls with the media picking them 13th?
No, I sort of figured they would be in the 11 to 14 range. And so I'd be lying to you if I told you I sat down and ranked all 14 schools myself, but I figured they would be sort of among the bottom four. And look, that's fair. Of the newcomers to the league, they're the one that has had the most tumultuous offseason. And so I get it. I don't pay too close attention to preseason media polls because at the end of the day, what do any of us know? But I figured they would be somewhere in that range. And I didn't talk to anybody who felt like they were disrespected. I talked to folks who thought, well, I thought maybe they would be picked to finish 11th or 12th. Well, is there any real huge difference between finishing 11th or 12th? You're not playing for a championship either way. I talked to folks who are more unobjective than I am, who I thought would sort of be butthurt by it, that were like, it kind of makes sense. I'd feel bad if I were a West Virginia fan. I do think it's interesting that Cincinnati was picked where they were to a degree because of who they don't play. They're not going to play.
Exactly.
If you look at the poll, the only team in the top five they play is Oklahoma, and they play them here. That clearly wasn't much of a factor, and maybe it shouldn't have been. So I didn't expect them to be in the middle pack. I didn't expect them certainly to be voted near the top. I thought maybe they're going to be picked to finish last. Maybe they're going to be picked to finish 11th. So they were sort of right there in between.
Do you think it's a realistic expectation for them to go in and compete day one with this type of schedule?
I think that depends on your definition of compete. Can they compete for a championship? Let's be honest. No. Can they find themselves in the middle of the pack in the conference? Yeah, they're going to need a lot of things to go right, and the volume of questions we have about this team are going to have to be answered with positive answers, right? Are they going to be able to throw the ball effectively? Well, if the answer is no, they're not competing. I don't know if they can or can't. Are they going to be good enough on the offensive line to really compete in the Big 12? I don't know, but the answer is going to have to be yes. Can the back end of that defense answer some of the questions that we have? Can they really win games in the Big 12 by playing defense and running the football? Do they stay healthy? Is Emory Jones the guy? Is this the right mesh of players with coaching staff? There are so many questions that I think it's hard to really pinpoint what their record is going to be. I think it's really hard to pinpoint how competitive they can be. They're dealing with so much uncertainty. So if a lot of that uncertainty ends out playing pretty favorably, sure, they can compete, maybe find themselves to 6 or 7 wins. But I really do believe that you have to realize really how much upheaval this program has gone through, and
Mhm.
truly how hard it is to transition from an uber successful coach to anybody else. That in itself is hard. We saw it with Butch Jones. We saw it with Luke Fickell his first season. And there are exceptions. There are times when the transition is seamless, and there's certainly times when a bad coach leaves and a better one takes over and they get the program going. The greatest coach in UC football history just left. Those are huge shoes to fill. Then you add to it the climate that we're in. Before the transfer portal, the road was rough for first-year head coaches. Now, with the ease of movement, it's an even more difficult gig. And then you add to it going up a level in competition.
Mhm.
I hope folks do sort of, I don't want to say give the new coaching staff a pass, but I would temper whatever the most unrealistic expectations are, because you're adding a lot of things that on their own are hard to navigate. A new head coach, a new conference, and a whole bunch of new players, and a new quarterback. This program enjoyed just tremendous stability. Really, I would throw 2022 out the window because they had a new offensive coordinator, they had a new quarterback. But 18, 19, 20, 21, continuity played a big role in UC's success. That continuity has been completely disrupted. And if at the very least, whatever this team does makes people appreciate the value of continuity that the Bearcats enjoyed in the heyday of the Luke Fickell era, then I think that would be a good thing. But I just hope folks realize that Cincinnati is dealing with so many things that are hard to deal with on their own. You add them together, this coaching staff and this team has its work cut out for itself.
Yeah, it's interesting you hit on the coaching transitions. If you look back over the last, we'll say 16 years, I think 12 of those 16 years, Cincinnati's won 9 or more games. And the 4 years that they didn't, it's been in the first or second year of a new coach. Obviously, 2 of those came under Tuberville, and then the Butch Jones transition, then Luke's first year. So I definitely think the coaching transition will impact this, and fans need to be patient. Switching gears a little bit.
And it's worth mentioning, the last time that they moved up a level in conference, they went from 8 wins in 2004 and to 5 wins in 2005. Now,
Right.
look at that 2005 team. There were a lot of guys who were part of the success in 06 and 07. It's a level up in competition, and that's a reflection of what the American Athletic Conference was, but it's more of a statement about just the level in competition. They're going up. That's hard, and we saw it in 2005, and that was with a coach who was a part of that transition. So yeah, it's a lot of things that are really difficult to navigate for a new coaching staff.
Well, and I think also bringing up the transfer portal, that is definitely beneficial to this new staff. Talking to Coach Satterfield down there at Big 12 Media Days, I asked him, hey, what are some of the challenges of adding so many new faces to this program while you're also trying to implement a new system? And his response, kind of with my eyes a little bit, he said it's no different than bringing in freshmen, except these guys come in with playing experience. So it's a little bit easier in terms of terminology when you're trying to get a point across.
Yeah, it's a lot of new guys with a brand new coaching staff, and new guys who are going to be forced to fill big roles. If this wide receiver group is any good, and it seems to me, and I said this a lot last week, it certainly seems that there's a lot of upside there.
Yeah.
But you went from having you went from having like mainstays at that position that could ease in anybody who was coming from the outside to just a whole bunch of new dudes who haven't played with each other, haven't played with this quarterback, haven't played in this system, haven't played in this conference. At the end of the day, I think talent's going to win out, but still, it's a lot. It's really, really hard, man. It's hard coaching a bunch of new guys. It's hard coaching a bunch of new guys when it's your first year on the job. And so how this coaching staff handles this, a lot of people have said, I think Scott Satterfield's a good dude. We're going to find out if he can coach. Well, we're going to find out if he can coach really, really soon, because if they can compete with all the new players they have, 21 transfers on top of a lot of guys who are just going to be playing more, who are part of the program last year, they will, I think, have proved their worth as a coaching staff and make people feel really good about what's to come.
Yeah, I think the biggest key. I feel confident the defense with so much returning talent, what they added on that side of the ball. I feel the defense will keep them in games, but the overall key to the team's success is going to be, the development of Emory Jones. Can they get good enough offensive line play to do what Scott Satterfield and that staff want to do in that outside run game, as well as the different the different gadgets and trick plays that they're going to do, with more bowl screens, outside zone runs, wheel routes out of the backfield. So it's going to be interesting what that type of offense does with the returning players.
Yeah, I think there's two things there. You mentioned the defense. That's where most of the familiar names are, especially up front, right? And so there's a lot of talent there. But in the Big 12 in 2023, what does a good defense give up per game? Is it 28 points?
Right.
Is it 24 points? Is it 30? That's a good question. I will say this. The two things about the offense relative to, I think, what we watched last year. First of all, even some of the folks that I have talked to in Louisville who kind of laughed at UC hiring Scott Satterfield or were happy that he was no longer going to be the coach of the Cardinals, even they would admit the guy knows how to coach offense. Never really had the quintessence. I like Malik Cunningham, but never really had an A-lister at quarterback, and he might not have one here. But even I talked to two of his most public ardent detractors who thought this is good for U of L that he's moving on. And they would admit the guy knows what he's doing in terms of game planning, constructing an offense, coaching an offense. That's good. I also do think nothing against the work of the previous staff in regards to coaching players up, getting them ready for the NFL, developing them, and winning a lot of games with them. But whether it be the undefeated season of 2021 with Mike Denbrock or last year with Gino Guidugli, despite all the success, I think most of us, if we were being honest, we kind of wondered, why isn't there a little bit more imagination in the running game? Well, I think the running back room is pretty talented on this year's team.
I agree.
Are they really taking complete advantage of the high-end talent they have? The tight end position, we talked often about, Josh Wiley and Lenny Taylor are NFL caliber tight ends. Well, yeah, last year it kind of felt like they were forgotten. And you could have said the same thing maybe the year before, but they won every game and they had so many different ways to beat you offensively. But I do think, especially running the football, it'll be interesting to see with some familiar faces returning, can a different staff breathe some life into that group? Even when Jerome Ford was so damn productive in 20 and 21, it kind of felt like every running play was the same, and then just occasionally he would break one, right?
Right.
And again, they won a lot of games. They were uber fun to watch. They were very productive, so it was really hard to take issue with the results. But if you were really being nitpicky, you kind of thought the running game itself lacked a little imagination. I'm interested in seeing what this coaching staff, where especially in league play, they're going to have to lean on the running game. I want to see what a more dynamic, maybe more creative running game looks like with some guys that have been a part of the program prior to this year.
So looking, you were at the spring game and a part of that, seeing what the offense looked like in that, do you feel that the offense should and will be more explosive this year? It's tough because, they're playing against each other.
Yeah. I don't think last year's offense would fall under the heading of explosive. Ben Bryant was not as good as we hoped he would be. He wasn't as bad as a lot of people would make him out to be. He played unevenly last year. But yeah, I mean, there were times where it just felt like offensively they were spinning their wheels. I think, based on, first of all, what I saw in the spring game did not jive with what I heard about everything leading up to the spring game, because everybody that I had talked to who had gone to the spring practices kind of warned me, like, Emory Jones, man. And then in the spring game, take it for what you want. I thought he looked fine. In fact, I thought he looked more than fine. And so, I couldn't help but, and we all did, notice the connection between him and Barry Jackson. If you look at where some of these wideouts have come from, and if you look at what their pedigrees are, and you just see what some of the measurables are in terms of their raw athletic ability, it feels like they've got something there. Now, they had Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker last season, who are NFL wide receivers. Do they have anybody who's that good? I don't know. But with those guys, they weren't uber explosive. So, we'll see. But I don't know. I don't know if this offensive line is going to be able to block in the Big 12. And I don't know how good Emory Jones is. I do know he once beat out Anthony Richardson. I don't think Anthony Richardson was all that good, even though he was taken so early in the draft. I don't know. It's so interesting and so fascinating with Emory Jones. He's played for 2 Power 5 programs. He did beat out Anthony Richardson. He was a highly touted recruit coming out of high school. He's in what looks to me to be sort of an offensive-friendly system with an offensive-friendly coach. But I don't know, because everything I heard during the spring was watch out. And then what I saw in the spring game was pretty damn enticing. Can he build upon that? And then also, how long is the leash going to be? We wondered that the last couple of years. What was always interesting about Luke Fickell was he was sometimes frustratingly so loyal to his starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
You think back to really before Dez became a star, there were a lot of times where, at halftime of a game, you would go, what, is it time to give Ben a chance? Up to and including the third game of his second season. And then Dez blew up. Luke was insanely loyal to him last year, in spite of all the public pressure to play Evan Prater. Unless Ben Bryant got hurt, they weren't taking him out. And he did get hurt, and Evan Prater played. Does Scott Satterfield have a leash as long as Luke Fickell? If the answer is yes, Emory Jones, assuming he's the starter week 1, will be given every chance to succeed. Does he have a little bit of a shorter leash? Does Brady Drogish compel Scott Satterfield to maybe have a shorter leash? We've gotten used to, for a program that had been defined by, backup quarterbacks constantly having to play, great continuity with Dez. His starting position was never seriously challenged. And until Ben Bryant got hurt last year, I'm not really sure his starting position was ever seriously challenged. We've kind of gotten used to whoever the guy is the guy no matter what. Is that going to be the case with his coaching staff?
I agree. One of the big storylines coming out of Big 12 Media Day, as far as Cincinnati fans are concerned, was Evan Prater getting moved to wide receiver. What were your thoughts on that decision and move?
It made sense. I like Evan Prater a lot, man. And I said this on my radio show. He got thrust into a pretty unenviable position. First of all, in the Tulane game. Secondly, in the bowl game. That's really, really tough. He handled it with class. I interviewed him for the pregame show before the Fenway Bowl, and then had a chance to walk out of the facility with him. And I like him a lot. Obviously, I root for him because he's a local guy. But I think there's 2 realities here. Number one, if you're Evan Prater, where do you have a better chance to have a successful college football experience? Is it playing quarterback or playing wide receiver? The answer is playing wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you have a chance to maybe make money playing football after college? Chances are, based on what we've seen, it's not quarterback. And as much as I don't want to say, God, you know what, Evan wasn't very good in the Fenway Bowl, and he wasn't very good against Tulane. Again, Tulane's a very good opponent. The Fenway Bowl was a tough set of circumstances. If you watch the game, I don't think you saw a quarterback whose skill set is good enough to compete in the Big 12. And maybe that would change, but he does have athletic ability, and I think there's going to be room for him at the wide receiver spot. But you want players to have a positive college football experience. I don't think that was going to happen this year for Evan playing QB. I think it can happen for him playing wide receiver. And if that's the case, the program's going to benefit, and he will individually as well.
Emory Jones was asked the Big 12 Media Days if it's kind of weird going from throwing next to someone to throwing to someone. What are your thoughts on that dynamic and the way Evan has handled it? Because, he came out with a tweet, all class.
Yes.
Scott Satterfield has mentioned, how willing he was to make the switch after sitting down with his family and Evan multiple times. What do you think that says about Evan and his character?
Class guy. I also think he's not a stupid guy. He understands. Like, all right, I'm not as good as Emory Jones. I probably wasn't as good as Ben Bryant, and that's not to say that if Evan Prater played quarterback in college football again, that he couldn't be a productive player. But for him this year, understanding the dynamic, not just between him and Emory Jones, but other guys at the position, was he ever really going to be given a chance to be the starting quarterback? Had he done anything in the games that he played or with the previous coaching staff to really earn the job of starting quarterback? And the answer is probably not. He has physical attributes. He's been a college football player for a while. Hopefully he can use the physical attributes, the experience playing quarterback, and just the experience of being a college football player to really contribute as a wide receiver. And I hope that happens. And if it does, what a cool story. But I don't think there was any doubt in my mind. Evan handled not winning the starting gig last year with class. He handled, I thought Ben Bryant handled the criticism he took with class. And it's not like Evan Prater was working behind the scenes to sabotage Ben Bryant's job.
Mm-hmm.
I root like hell for him, and I'm going to root like hell for him to play a wide receiver well this year.
So as we transition to the Big 12, do you have any favorite memories from the AAC, and what are you looking forward to most with the move to the Big 12?
Yeah, here, hang on. I just so happen to have this. This is my favorite memory of the AAC.
Yeah.
It's me and Dan Horde smoking Victory cigars in front of Touchdown Jesus.
What's your cigar choice there?
I think Dan is smoking a Perdomo 10th anniversary. I believe I am smoking a Monte Cristo.
Okay. I like Monte Cristo.
I know Dan is smoking a Perdomo. I think I'm smoking a Monte Cristo, but that's October 2nd, 2021. One of the happiest days of my life. Obviously, It wasn't an AAC game.
Right.
So I start with that. If we're talking purely football, there's a few, man. I mean, the obvious one is beating Houston. Jerome Ford's run, which made it 35-13.
Mm-hmm.
At halftime, they're up a point, and you're sort of feeling like, God, would it be the most Cincinnati thing ever for all the things that have to go their way, and then they lay an egg at home.
Yeah.
And they kind of spun their tires in the first half, and then they got going, and then Jerome Ford broke one and made it a 22-point game, and you knew they're winning the title. So that night certainly stands out. But I remember being in the Rose Bowl when they beat UCLA, which, at face value wasn't a great win. UCLA stunk that year. It was year one of Chip Kelly. It wasn't this massive upset, but the Bearcats have been pretty bad the year before. The expectations for that season, 2018, were that maybe they would win 6 games. And yet, in a game in which Hayden Hurst leaves, Des Ridder comes in, they use him and Mike Warren to get out of there with a victory. And I remember that night I wrote a piece about how, like, it's a great win, but look at everybody who contributed. And it was all the young guys, starting with Des Ridder in his first college game. And you really that day got a sense of, holy hell, like, there's some really talented guys here who are getting playing time early. Imagine what these guys could be in a couple of years now. I think anybody who's saying you saw them going undefeated in 2020 or undefeated in 2021 is lying, but that really sort of, that day kind of set the tone. And then James Wiggins' walk-off pick against SMU. Love James.
Yep.
One of my favorite guys to talk to. Just a cool moment. But, I mean, just so many in the A. As much as people dump on the league, as much as the league was not a huge asset to UC, the football program's profile got to a point that it had never gotten, even under Brian Kelly, as members of the American Athletic Conference. And so my memories are more good than bad.
So I do got to ask, I had Jim Kelly on last night talking to him. Why is Greenville, North Carolina probably your favorite thing that you're going to avoid moving forward?
Nothing to do there. Not a great stadium. I don't want to say they've not played good games there, because they played a really good game in which Sauce had a pick 6 where they're down 10 points and they come back and win. They won a game. frankly, it was one of the more surprising victories of the Tuberville regime. 2015, it was the week after they fell behind 51-3, and they go to Greenville and win. So, but not a lot to do there. Stadium and basketball arena, not great. Game times were always weird, and we never went there. I don't think they ever played a football game there in October, or they certainly didn't play one in September. Never played one when the weather was nice. So I'm sure the people in Greenville are really nice. I'm sure there are places to go in Greenville that are terrific. But I think I've spent enough time in Greenville for one lifetime. I'm good. I'm good not going back. Now, after I go to places like Provo and Manhattan, Kansas, maybe I'll have a new fondness for Greenville.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I'm not disappointed to put Greenville, North Carolina in my rearview mirror.
Do you have a certain Big 12 venue you're looking forward to visiting for the first time, or just in general?
Phog Allen Fieldhouse, man. I can't wait. That it's an iconic sports venue. It's on my bucket list. I'm looking forward to that. I deeply wish they were playing Texas on the road in football.
Same, yeah.
Deeply wish they were playing Texas on the road in football. That's obviously not the case. But yeah, that conversation starts with Allen Fieldhouse.
What about as far as football goes?
Stillwater,
yep.
Oklahoma State, has always looked like a cool place on TV. So I'm excited about that. I've been to BYU. Which is a really pretty place. Provo, Utah is gorgeous. If you like to get after it, it's maybe not going to be your jam. But yeah, I mean, I've watched enough games from afar of Oklahoma State where I've thought that looks like a cool place. So I am that's probably at the top of the list of Big 12 football places I'm looking forward to seeing.
Well, I think one of the forgotten things with this transition is how much it's going to impact baseball. You look at all of the, top end programs within the Big 12 that are really good baseball programs, TCU, Oklahoma State, even West Virginia. West Virginia had a top 25 team this year. So I think that's another area. What were your thoughts on the Nike uniforms? That was obviously another big topic on Media Day.
Fine. Fine. I'm not going to pretend like they were the greatest that I've ever seen, but I thought they looked good. I think the Nike apparel, the stuff that fans can buy, is going to look really, really cool. I'm excited to see, from a basketball perspective, how those things play out. I thought they were fine. I saw some grumbling. To me, they weren't worth grumbling about. I'm not going to pretend they're the coolest uniforms I've ever seen, but college football teams in this day and age tend to go through a whole bunch of uniform combinations during a season. So I'm sort of looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Let's transition a little bit to basketball. Wes Miller was in Rucker Park today for the Big 12 hoops in Rucker Park. How do you think the exposure within the Big 12 is going to help the Cincinnati Brenton grow even more than it already is?
Well, I think the most important thing is, we talked about the stability with football. It feels like Wes is achieving that. And, you talk about a picture of stability for 3 decades. It was UC basketball, right? Basically 2 head coaches for the better part of 30 years. And then suddenly you have 2 coaching changes in 2 years. You have a pandemic, you have the portal, and not just coaching changes, but late coaching changes. Mick left after the national championship game in 2019. And the John Brandon departure came, basically a month after the season ended that year. So the first year for Wes, it felt to me, and I don't think he'll ever say this as an excuse, but it just felt to me like he was really, really swimming upstream. And then, last year sort of got things settled a little bit more. Now it sort of feels like there's stability, and they're doing a great job recruiting. They've had, I think, a good portal season. But, okay, things are stable, but now they're moving into the best basketball league in the country.
Right.
So, right when it feels like, all right, the seas are calm and they got their coach and there's no more coaching. We're good here. We figured out NIL and the portal and now you got to go play Baylor and Kansas, and Houston's coming with you, and you got to go to this league that is just a bear. So, but I think they can compete in this league. based on what they have brought in. I'm not sure how good they're going to guard. And I think Day Thomas is going to have to be even better than we hope at creating shots. But if he can, I think they got some guys who can make shots. We're going to see how the waiver process plays out. I'm not necessarily encouraged based on the way things have unfolded with football. But I think Wes is the guy. I think the fact that you saw last year's team got better. Now, what they've lacked is that signature sort of grab onto it victory. I thought for a while they were going to get it in Houston, a game that, frankly, they should have won. But, unfortunately, they haven't gotten that victory aside from Illinois' first year that really got people talking. They haven't beaten Xavier. Their bigger league games, Houston and Memphis, they haven't won. Their bigger non-league games, they haven't been able to win. And I think in terms of branding and, just sort of getting people to talk about Cincinnati basketball again, that's got to happen. But there's going to be plenty of opportunities for it to happen in the Big 12. But more than anything for me, they have finally achieved some level of stability. And I think if anything, and I hate to keep coming back to this theme, maybe you weren't a huge Mick Cronin fan. Maybe you weren't a huge Bob Huggins fan. I think what you have at least done over these last couple of years is appreciate the value of continuity in a college basketball program, especially in this day and age.
The Cincinnati-Dayton game will be announced on Wednesday. Do you think it's important for regional rivalries like that for Cincinnati?
I think it's fun for college basketball fans. Now, me personally, as a diehard UC fan and a Dayton alum, I hate it. I hate it because it's like rooting against one of your children. And I'm asked this whenever the game happens, which is obviously not too frequently. I root for Cincinnati. I've been a Bearcat fan since I was 11 years old. I started at UD when I was almost 18. So Cincinnati's grandfathered in. I hate the game. But college basketball is more fun, to me at least, when your favorite team is playing schools that you've heard of and when your favorite team is playing schools in the general area. So I am a big proponent of Cincinnati and Dayton playing, Cincinnati and Miami playing, Xavier and Dayton playing, Xavier and Miami playing. Obviously, the majority of these games don't happen. I view this simply from the viewpoint of a fan. Those games are more interesting than anything else that you would replace them with. The Bearcats have obviously struggled in recent years in the Skyline Chili Crosstown shootout. You will find Bearcat fans who say, you know what, just don't play the game anymore, which first of all, that's a sore loser's mentality. Secondly, what do you got that's better? What do you got that's better? You're gonna play Villanova every year? Like what's you're gonna play Kentucky every year? So yeah, I'm a proponent of schools that have some geographic commonality playing on maybe not on an annual basis, but playing on a regular basis. And fans always love to sort of denigrate the other school they're associated with. Oh, we don't need to play Dayton. What do you got that's better? And again, those games to me are more interesting than most quote bye games.
I know they were picked 14th in the preseason media poll. Was there any excitement on your end with renewing that West Virginia rivalry in football?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, they're the two schools closest in proximity, at least the school closest in proximity for UC. It's a quick trip to Morgantown. They played a very memorable game in 2008. The Kazim Ali touchdown catch from Tony Pike, a game that the Bearcats did everything they could to blow. Sure, absolutely. I think it's the easiest way to grow a rivalry is to have some level of geographic commonality. Now, it's not imperative. Cincinnati and UCF have developed, I think, a nice little rivalry to a degree. But the natural way of doing it is to have two schools that are close to each other playing a bunch of great games against each other. And so I'm excited for it. I like going to Morgantown. I know there's a lot of West Virginia grads in this area who will hopefully come to the games. And so, yeah, I am excited. I am excited for that this year.
At the end of the day, for both programs, what does success for you look like for these two teams?
I think that's always a a question that you go, okay, at the end of the year, let's apply some context. So the Cincinnati Reds, right? If I would have said to you at the beginning of the season, what's a successful year? You would have said, avoid 90 losses. Well, now if they do that, it's like, well, what the hell happened? So, circumstances change how you view success. And so, like, all right, let's say the Bearcats go to Pittsburgh and win, and they're 3-0, and they're playing great, and they're blowing teams out. Well, suddenly you're going to go, well, wait a minute. They should be able to finish 500 in the Big 12. And, or I guess it's a 9-game year. They should go 5-4 in the Big 12, end up with 8 wins. But then if they don't, you're going to, but then if it's, let's say they go 6-6, and it's like, yeah, but at one point they were 3-0 and killing everybody, and they were snuck into the top 25. So the way the year unfolds can change how you view success. From a football perspective, I think if they hit the over, I think you're going to feel pretty good. Now, the over at most books is 4.5. That means 5-7, which is not bowl eligible. That means you're going to have to view that as a successful season. But Luke Fickell's first year, they won 4 games, and they were like 5 plays away from finishing 1-11. Butch Jones' first year, and I wasn't a huge Butch Jones fan, but Butch Jones' first year, he went 4-8, and then had 2 double-digit win seasons. So if the win total this year in a league that is tougher than both of those leagues, if the win total this year could be 5 or more, I'm going to have a hard time saying it's not a successful year. But let's say they start 5-0 and they hit the over and then lose their next 7. Are you then going to think, God, that was a success? No. So I think those questions are easier to answer once it's over. For basketball, I want to say make the NCAA tournament. I'll stop short of that. Just do this for me. The 2 weeks leading up to Selection Sunday, I want to be looking at bracketology.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been a few years since I've done that.
Same.
Like I want to be looking, I want to be seeing with the bracketologist, whoever your favorite one is, where's Cincinnati? If I'm doing that, then they've got a shot, and then we'll see how things go. But again, if let's say they win all their league games, let's say they go to the Cintas Center and win. Let's say they win all their non-conference games, and then Big 12 play. We're going to think, God, this team's better than we thought. And then they win 4 games in the Big 12. That's not going to feel like a successful year. I'll make it just sort of baseline 2 weeks before Selection Sunday. Am I taking a glance at bracketology to see if Cincinnati is at least in the mix?
I would agree with that. So you and I, we first talked at the Cincy Reigns event at Ryan Geist when Cincy Light was released. How important is it, do you think, for Cincinnati to already have that structure in place heading into the Big 12?
Well, it's important. And look, NIL money can come from a lot of different places. I think it's important to look, obviously, you want big money people involved. But I also think it's important to sort of let the public know, here's how you can help by buying a 6-pack, by buying a couple of pints at Rheingeist. I think there are ways. I was talking about this with a friend of mine. I can't write a check for $10,000 to a collaborative. I can't give it to a basketball player. I'd love to hire a basketball player and say, you're going to do some work on the radio show, and that's going to be name, image, and likeness. And I can't do that. What I can do is I can throw some money at a brewery that makes a good beer. And so I think it's important to make quote regular fans feel like you can help. And to me, that's what this does, because I think a lot of folks, when they hear NIL, they think business owners, big money people, your traditional deep pocketed folks. You need those people. It goes without saying. You need those people. But I think this to me sends a message. You like beer, don't you? Well, buy some of this, and hopefully you enjoy it. And this helps the collaborative here, because even if you don't like the NIL world that we're in, the reality is this is the reality. So you could either fold your arms and stand in a corner and wish the college sports were the way they used to be, or hope that the program that you root for figures out the best way to compete in this environment. And NIL is a vital part of that.
What were your thoughts on Cincy Light? Were you a fan? Did you like it?
I got a pullback here, and I
Yeah.
got 2 Crowlers, and that's good pull. That's good pull beer. That's good.
Mhm.
That's good post lawn cutting beer,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's I might have like 9 or 10 this weekend.
Are you more of a beer or bourbon guy?
This time of year, I'm a beer guy.
Yeah. Same.
Uh, now, when we get to like November, it kind of depends, but I'm a little bit more of a bourbon guy.
Yeah, same here. I obviously have a huge collection behind me. We'll finish up on this. What has been your impression? Because you've had some interactions with Scott Satterfield and his staff. What has
Mhm.
been your impression of him and what he's built to date?
I'll name drop, and it's a name drop that you're not going to like, but the day they hired him, I texted Chris Mack and I said, am I going to like Scott Satterfield? And he said, you're going to bleeping love him. And so I said that to Scott, and his response was something along the lines of, well, let's see what our record is after year one. Seems affable, seems approachable. I've not had a chance to watch him in a practice setting. I will when fall camp begins. I think he has. I think pretty. I think he's done a pretty good job of handling this very weird climate of having to build a team on the fly, having to assemble a coaching staff on the fly, having to recruit very, very quickly, dealing with all the questions about replacing a legend, moving into the Big 12. My impressions of him as a person have been favorable. I don't know. I mean, from day one, when folks have asked about the hire, it sort of came from so far out of left field that my initial reaction was surprise, and then I don't know. I will say that his opening press conference, when he talked about, look, at Louisville, we didn't do as good of a job as we need to recruiting locally. I think over the course of time, it's going to be interesting to see if that changes, and it's going to be really interesting to see how successfully they integrate local guys with players that they're recruiting from parts of the country that maybe the previous staff didn't tap into quite as much. I thought that answer was interesting, quite frankly, given the fact that he coached 100 miles from Cincinnati, and given the fact that the program's recent success has largely come on the shoulders of players from this area. So I am hopeful that better inroads are being made, but I'll say this, man. I've talked to so many people, and this is not a reflection of the previous regime. I've talked to so many people at UC who have deal with them all the time, and they love him. Just easy to get along with, cooperative. Does any of that mean he's going to win games at UC? No, but it does stand out to me nonetheless.
I think, yeah, same here. Whether it's been a recruit or a current player that I'm talking to, one of the most encouraging things for me with this new staff is they've all had the same message with the type of relationships these guys are building and the culture within those relationships. So
yeah,
I think that's important, especially for a new staff. You have kids from all over the country that they're recruiting, and they're all getting the same message. So that's kind of encouraging going forward.
Yeah, and look, he has, and Luke obviously had this toward the end of his time. He's got the benefit of being able to walk in and go recruit somebody, and we're recruiting to the Big 12, and we are recruiting to an era of college football expansion, and it's been proven at this school. NFL scouts are going to notice you. This isn't some anonymous hideaway where you're going to go play football and nobody's going to pay attention. Fans are engaged. The league is high profile. It's become a place that churns out NFL players, and it's a place where you can win and be seen, and all those things matter. And obviously, yeah, the NIL component's there, but he was asked about that on day one. I asked him about that on day one. He certainly seems. There are coaches who talk about, well, NIL is part of what we do, but you get the sense they have been dragged into it kicking and screaming behind the scenes. I don't get that impression with Scott Satterfield, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, Jim Kelly mentioned that last night when him and I were talking, that Luke didn't necessarily embrace the NIL, but he knew it wasn't going
Mhm.
anywhere, so he had to. And I think Scott being willing to do that is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think with Luke, it was begrudging. It was I'm not thrilled about this, but this is how it is, and I'm not sure. I think it would have been interesting to see how that staff would have navigated this world here had they stayed, because my impression was that when the new coach took over, when Scott took over, some significant catching up had to be done, and to what level that's happened, I don't know, but I got the impression that the new coach, whoever it was going to be, was going to have to play catch up in that regard.
I'd agree. Well, Mo, this has been a lot of fun. I definitely appreciate you coming on the At Large Bid podcast tonight, and I look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
This has been Ryan Roberts. We'll see you next week with a different episode.